Colleagues, welcome back to the office to today's presentation. There are two I'll be watching or listening on demand wherever you happen to receive content. We distribute our show through YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook. On over to cpetoday.com and locate today's course page. You can, for your CPE credits, will be automatically generated and available for download. In addition to your purchase, you approximately 4 per hour. They'll pop up automatically, so please keep an eye out for them. Credits to help us. And then beyond that, in users that you might need. So passwords for these people, I typically recommend. So I would tell you the pull of where it can be cracked if given it's online. Google camp this file on a regular basis. But that are out there, okay. One such tools that kind of, but they're not present here. Okay, and you can also create other types of users too. There's all different types of accounts that you can choose to set up here. Again, we got your external accountant as well that can ultimately come in and can provide, for example, go in and create. Now, if you need a higher level of security, choose to do any preferences. My preferences relate to the current logged in user, and company preferences will relate to the overall company. Now, so most of the meaty stuff is going to be over here on the company. So like, for example, the closing date is going to be set over here under that company preferences. Whether or not you use account numbers are going to be in the company preferences. This you have to post into the sub account. I've got in exhaustive detail with virtually every single specific setting. Preferences like 2-digit year versus 4. So when company data, even if applications aren't running, which can be really useful if you wanted to pull this data out into a dashboard or if you wanted to integrate this into Microsoft Excel. So that would be where you would go ahead and set some of those different options listed here. And again, if you check out the book for each one of these sections, I've got what they do, how they function inside of QBO place, and that's going to be under the gear icon and then account and settings. And then from here, this is going to be where you can actually modify many of the specific settings related to how this company file operates. Okay, so this is going to be where you can set things like the company logo, the EIN, the social security, as a C Corp, S Corp, partner groups are. And then really the other major meaty items are going to be sales and expenses and advanced. Inside your sales, this will turn off and on different permissions and parameters in the sales forms. So whether or not, for example, you show XYZ fields on an invoice or a PO. Custom fields to your invoice, maybe like a customer PO information about your invoice PO. Custom fields to your invoice, maybe like a customer PO information about your invoices or other fields, other types of forms as well. You can store those as custom fields. So this is where you could turn off, for example, custom transaction numbers, whether or not you show discounts, deposits, tips, whether or not you want that whole tagging thing on or off, whether or not you're going to have, late fees. For example, if you want to send this stuff as a summary or you want to send the details, do you want to include a PDF? Do you want to send this in rich format? Or again, this is where you set your closing your books. For your chart of accounts, one option I always turn on immediately is the account numbers. So I can just, some automation stuff is set up here. One good gotcha that you should know, both with QuickBooks Online and desktop, is this multi-currency. Okay, if you turn their foreign currency into their home currency. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to mention too, on classes and locations. If this wasn't clear, class sheet by class or location, or at least a complete balance sheet by class and location. It will not tie. So when we use classes and locations in QuickBooks Online, it really only applies to income statement levels. So just be aware of that. Balance sheet will always be for the entire entity. You can run a balance sheet by class. I'm telling you right now, it won't be right though. One other thing I will tell you here, and then we'll go ahead and take our afternoon break. One other thing I'll tell you here is this option, sign me out if inactive for, okay? If you're like me, you'll typically get up logging you out. You can go ahead and set this to a maximum of 3 hours and it will not log you out during that period of time. Kind of cool, okay? Now, one extra thing that you can do is that you can use what is called the QuickBooks Online Advanced app. Okay, and what this is, I'll bring this up here in a moment, and I'll also tell you why I don't really particularly care for it either. Click up top, there's this option here that says get the desktop app. Okay, What this will do is it will download what's called a thin client application to your desktop application. So we'll install it real quick so you can see what this looks like. And the thing with thin clients that will allow you to be able to interact with this particular service like it is a local app, but it's still very, very much recording and I totally get it. This would hopefully alleviate some of those concerns and allow you to be able to interact with this application like it was a normal desktop application. Okay. All right. So this is what it looks like. We've installed it. Okay. And it looks identical. This will put a icon on your screen for that QuickBooks Online Advanced, and then you can act and interact with it like in some quick links to some of the major aspects of the multiple tabs open of the same file. But the part that's really just not fun if you are a QBOA subscriber, well, one of the big things here is that you can switch between your client accounts, right? So you can't use this tool though if you're a QBOA subscriber to access a client unless that client is also utilizing Online Advanced. So if they're using Plus or Smart or Essentials, this won't work. So that's just kind of a gotcha that frankly, I always kind of like, well, I really don't see the point of using this now, because if I'm the accountant, I'm usually jumping in and out of my company files. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and we're going to take our afternoon break, and then, okay, a question popped up here, and this came in from Susie. Does Intuit cost an additional amount? And I think you're asking me here, Susie, is there a separate fee per company desktop licensing? It is tied to there's a subscription, and the subscription is not necessarily tied to the QuickBooks working file, the desktop or enterprise product. You can pay for one license, have as many people in as you need for the number of licenses that you have, up to 20. Those targets I was telling you about. So if you're looking to upgrade to QuickBooks Online, and I told you need to have under 750,000 targets, this is where you can what server, what port, how big the cache is, how many users are logged in. You can see also other critical information, so how many accounts you have, a number of integrated applications, so on and so forth. Okay. Is going to be through that F2 menu, and please feel free to ask. Okay, yes. Okay, so much of QBO and QBD are lists, just basically lists and lists of information. And really, accounting at the end of the day is information. It's about organizing. How lists run and some of the specific gotchas with it will be really helpful to leveraging this application. For example, you'll manage all aspects of your chart of accounts. If you're using, let's say, classes, you'll have a class list. If you're using locations, you'll have a locations list, so on and so forth. You'll see your customer and vendor profile list. This is where you can go ahead and grab, for example, other things related to your customers and vendors. So the specific types of themselves are going to be applied to the specific what will be available for you to post into. Okay. All right. So the first thing you should know is the organization. The first level of organization on this is going to be the account type. So as you can see here, the flow of the finance and sales orders, those are non-posting accounts. They'll be at the bottom. Okay. Now, designate how something is displayed on the financial statement. Okay. So let's go ahead and put this into alpha order, put our savings account. Okay. And with that little guy, you can go ahead and you can pick these up, and you can go ahead and we'll adjust that particular sort order. Okay. Whatever order I would like them to be. So let's, for example, and I'm going to exaggerate this just so you can see the difference. Okay, let's move. We have to stay within the current, that will follow that particular order. Inventory asset is now above that. And likewise, we move to savings above checking. So that diamond order allows you to put stuff into a specific order if you would like to do so. And so that's how you get your financial statement to match the orders between one. These I think are 300, but I have a standard set of numbering that I do. And so to me, I mean, accounting numbers are really, really helpful. Once that's on, you can come in, not auto number these, and you can absolutely have accounts like this one right here that does not have a number. I would tell you to be very consistent with respect to the work. Likewise, you can also set up things at payroll. One of these accounts and select edit. you'll see that this is an account, sub-account of payroll liabilities overall. For myself, if you were to look at my system, I actually have an administrative expenses, and then it goes to 801, 802, so on and so forth, but they're actually all sub-accounts of G&A, okay? Account types. This is my personal preference. And again, you can obviously do what you want here. This becomes a bigger issue with respect to QBO. I try to keep my accounts as simple as possible. And what I mean by this is that I try to just not get into the real specific specialty type of, really specific. I try to keep my accounts as simple as I possibly can, because I just find the administration and overhead of having those. This is going to become effective if you are outputting balance sheets or income statements for tax forms. This will attempt to kind of mirror things up for you. And, if you actually take the time to set it up correctly, and this is where templating of these files, especially between clients, can be really, you can switch the particular view. So you can go to a flat view instead of showing the hierarchy. Okay. This is also going to be where you can print this list, find specific transactions, and you can also import directly in from Excel as well. So if you have for you automatically. Okay. Now, so if we are inside of an account here and we have no accounts, like there are no transactions inside of it, great, go nuts. You can delete that guy, and for that account, it no longer can be disability. If we try to go to delete this account, it's basically going to say, don't do that. You can't do that, but you can mark that account as inactive. And if we mark that account as inactive, what that means is the data will not be there, but it will not be an option. Very well documented is that you just have to call these things the same thing. And so you have to give them the same account number. They have to be the same account type. So this is account 62110, and it's disability insurance. So we'd come over here and we would come up 621110, and we're going to go ahead and call it the same thing. Disability insurance, save and close. And it's going to pop up this thing. It's going to say, hey, this is already being used. Do you want to merge them? And for all intents and purposes, it deletes, in this case, the liability insurance accounts and merges everything, all those existing transactions historically too, into that one account. That one more time. Do I want to merge them? Yes, there we go. And so now they are merged into one. Okay. And so that now that one account has all of the historical information for both accounts into one place. Okay. So that is how that works. So when I've had a client who's had absolutely screwy stuff, I try to obviously clear out as much as I can. I try to reclassify as much as I possibly can. But if they've created a whole bunch of accounts that just frankly make no sense, the process that I end up taking with this is that I'll ultimately just merge them until, everything is kind of moved into where I want them to be. And so if they created, I had one account, I had one, this is my go-to story, but I remember being in public accounting, and I had a client, and this person set up an account for, she was a doctor. She was a great doctor. So there's no criticism here. It's just, you're not an accountant. You don't know any better. But she created a chart of account, an account in the chart of accounts for hair appointments, and it was like, a couple $100 or something. And I just remember having to merge that into personal expenses to ultimately get it to go away. But that merging is what I've done inside of the COA to kind of make life a little bit easier. Okay, so that's your chart of accounts. That's all the major data you really need to know about it. You can run other things here. You can, access your other major aspects: reconciliation, transfer funds, write checks. You can run your reports. You can do attachments. So if you want to attach stuff to these files, you can go ahead and do that right out of here as well. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about your items list. Okay, here's your items list. Now, items list is going to include a lot of stuff: services, inventory parts, non-chargeable inventory, subtotals, groups, discounts, payments, sales tax items, and more. It's basically the meat of your business. This is going to be your revenue and your parts, all of it. So all the different stuff that you sell inside your business, your professional services, your products, your inventory, all of these are going to be handled within here. Now, ultimately, it comes down to just a couple of different categories with respect to the types of items that you can put in. Okay, so you have services. I would really kind of say it ultimately comes down to things you do versus things you sell, in my mind. There's other stuff in here like sales tax items and groups, and those certainly have their spots, but mostly it just comes down to things you sell and things you provide. And big stuff you really need to know about this is you give it a name, you can create hierarchy, sub items. If it's a service, you can put in the rate, for what that typical service would run. You can also put in the where the revenue should go for this. So for example, floor plans will get mapped into the chart of accounts into, in this case, design income. So that product, which will appear on the invoice, will ultimately make its way to the income statement, and that revenue will fall down to design income. Okay. Now, if it's a product that you sell, for example, an inventory part, works exactly the same, except you got a little bit more information. You have your revenue account that it's going to flow to, but then you also have your cost of goods sold account as well. And so this will track when you purchase things, the inventory cost, and when you sell things, it will put the revenue to the appropriate place. And this is also where you can set up whether or not things should be taxable, what the standard price should be, what your standard cost should be. And as we talked about before, this is where you can specify your preferred vendor and then other alternative vendors that you might choose to use as well. You can also track, manufacturer part numbers, and then you can pull that information out into custom reports as needed. You have a whole series of custom fields. So if you wanted to create some additional fields, like, tracking this particular color of something or the material, what is mahogany, what is, one is, oak or something like that. You can track and create those additional fields as needed so that you have all the data that you need related to your products and inventory and services for that matter. Now, all the things that you set up here, these are going to ultimately end up inside of your invoices. And so when you come on over here and you go to select something like blueprints, it's going to go ahead and, pre-fill this information for you. One quick tip, by the way, when you're going to create an invoice, don't start over here in descriptions. Okay? Because when you come over here, you cannot create an invoice without an item. But the second you create an item, it's going to blow out your description. And that's always really frustrated me, because I tend to keep my products and services pretty simple, and then I'll customize the description as needed. But always start with the item and then add the description if you're going to override that, because it's going to, once you select the item, it's going to include whatever default description you have included in there as well. Now, likewise, you can also adjust these into different orders. So if you want to move these around and have different sort sequences, you can certainly go ahead and do so with this as well. Okay, now other types of lists that are inside of here too, you've got your fixed assets. This would be your fixed asset registry. So if you wanted to keep track and depreciate your assets, this would be how you would set this up. So for your fixed asset, you give it an asset name, an asset account, your acquisition date, acquisition price, who you bought it from, the other relevant information for this, and then you can use this for your depreciation purposes. Okay, unit of measures, your your price levels, all your payroll stuff, your workers' comp stuff, all that stuff is going to be listed here as well. And this is also where you can come in and you can adjust your memorized transactions, as well as edit the various lists and groups that you've established inside of your file. So your customer groups, your vendor group, your employees groups, all of those are going to be listed here. Okay. So again, what you see with respect to the different lists will depend on how you use the application. So, if you are using inventory, for example, you're going to see inventory stuff. If you're not using inventory, you're not going to see those inventory accounts as being in there. Okay. So it really just depended on how the actual application is being done. Okay. Now you can also customize a couple of the views of this particular list as well. So there's an option in here called Customize Columns. And from this Customize Columns list, this is where you can go ahead and you can add additional columns if you want to see. So at the moment, we can see whether or not it's active, its name, whether or not it is selected to be presented in this list. But we could add other stuff as well. So like maybe the class code, the bank account, the income account, the tax line. Okay. And we'll add those other items in so that we can customize it. And that customized list or the customization of the columns that are presented in here is present throughout the entire application itself. Okay, now one thing you can also do is, let's say you wanted to migrate this from one QBD file to another QBD file, and you just want to bring, for example, like your payroll, not your payroll, your vendors, you want to bring in your fixed assets, you want to bring in your inventory. Well, one of the cool things you can do with these lists is that you can export them out. Now, you can absolutely do that through the reports section here. And through the reports section here, you can just basically generate a listing of those, different accounts, and it'll kick it out to Excel. And that's exactly the way that you probably are mostly familiar with this. And likewise, you could always come down here to the reports section, and there's and all of these reports, if you come over here to the list section, this is where you could just generate this and kick it out to Excel or through some other method as well. Okay, but there's also another method. It's called IIF files. Now, these IIF files are proprietary. They're actually just really a CSV file, as comma separated value, although they're not really comma separated. But they're a proprietary Intuit format that you can then use to be able to move data between files pretty easily. And what's nice about this is how you can, for example, pull data from one file into another. And you can also import in data from other files to another as well. So let's go take a look at how we can generate some of those files. Now, what we're going to end up doing here is we're going to go back into that file menu, into the utilities section, and then we're going to choose to export those files out. So we'll come on up here to File, Utilities, and then we're going to go ahead and choose Export. And this is where we're going to go ahead and be able to export lists. So let's go ahead and just grab maybe our chart of accounts. We could grab our customers as well. We could export any of these lists for that matter. Click OK. And we're going to go ahead and let's just put these into the downloads directory. Let's just grab one. Okay, lists to IIF. There we go. All right, and let's go ahead and open up our computer here. Let's go to our downloads directory, and you'll see this COA. Now, if you click this, this will open up inside of QuickBooks. You can optionally go ahead and show more options, and you can go ahead and open this inside of Excel as well, and you can actually browse some of the data. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and open this in Notepad just so you can see it. It's essentially just that data. It's not actually CSV format. I'm pretty sure this is tab format, which is an even more antiquated file. But the separation between each of these is actually a tab. And this is how you can basically move data from one to the other. And this is the native format, believe it or not, that QuickBooks wants to use. So that's how you can get data out of these lists and be able to pull these over to other places. Okay. Let's go ahead and talk for just a minute with respect to QuickBooks Online. Okay, your list inside of QuickBooks Online, come on up here to the gear icon, and from the gear icon, we're going to go ahead and select all lists. Lots fewer lists inside of QBO compared to QBD, QBE. Much simpler, okay? And for the most part, I would tell you the big ones that you're going to be dealing with on a regular basis: chart of accounts, recurring transactions, if you choose to memorize those transactions, and if you choose to leverage that functionality, okay? Your products and services are going to be your inventory and your services that you sell. And that's pretty much it. Looking at your chart of accounts, okay, pretty much functionally identical in terms of how it operates. The big difference here is that, let me switch over here to the sample file, is that you're going to be limited. So in plus and lower, you are going to be limited to 250 and less accounts. So you can't really just go to the end of the world with respect to your account options here. It's only going to give you the ability to, in this particular case, use 250. And it loads up about 50 just right off the bat. So, just be aware of that. Now, that same principle I showed you about merging accounts together, that works exactly the same inside of here too. If I wanted to merge, let's say I wanted to merge my fuel into my automobile expense so I can alleviate and get one more account back up. I can go ahead and do so in the exact same way. I just need to make them look identical. Okay, we'll go ahead and select save. And it'll pop up with this exact same message here. Do you want to merge these accounts? We'll go ahead and select yes, and it will go ahead and merge them for us. Okay, now a quick word with respect to QBO lists here and with the chart of accounts. Personally, this drives me wild. I cannot stand how they've set this up. You've got your same type of accounts that are listed up here, but then what they also do is that they also specify like different sub account options. And let me go down here to an expense so you can kind of see what I'm seeing. Do you see over here, you got type and then you've got detail type. So it's an expense, but then it's another miscellaneous service expense. It's an expense and then it's a service expense or an insurance expense or something else like this. I just don't really like these. And what ends up happening is that you can't really get the sequence and the order and everything that you want. Obviously, do what you want. My personal recommendation is I keep these things as fairly generic as I can. Again, I use numbers, and then I also use the type. So I'm not saying you can't make income, expenses, bank, so on and so forth, but I just refuse to use this detail type because it's not generally what I want it to be, and it also doesn't present it in the order that I want it to be in. So if you were to go look at the QBO files that I actually have set up on this, everything is set to, for my expenses, an example, is set to office and G&A. Okay. And that just allows me to have a lot more control over the sort and presentation sequence at the balance sheet level. The only thing I can think of with respect to this is the fact that they have, they've made this tool less for professionals and more for consumers. And that's just one less thing to be able to organize. Okay. So that's just my preference. A little quick tip for me. So hopefully that helps you as well. Same type of thing with respect to QBO. You can't delete stuff if there's data already in it. It's actually a little bit more egregious than that. If you create the account to begin with, you can't delete it. So there is really no delete functionality inside of QBO. So I would tell you that be careful, be a little bit more thoughtful with respect to how you get data inside of this application, because there's a good chance you're going to be married to it the second you put that data in. Thank you so much for attending our presentation and podcast for today. As a reminder, you can check out cpetoday.com for all your continuing education needs. We have courses on every topic you can think of, from accounting to audit to ethics and regulation and more. Everything you need to know to stay relevant, current, and up to date with the profession. Again, check out cpetoday.com. If you're a new watcher or listener to the CPE Today podcast, again, we offer you a free course and a free credit for you to try our services. Pick the podcast of your choosing and use coupon code ONEFREEPODCAST at checkout to make that purchase free. If you enjoyed our presentation, please consider connecting with us on social media and let us know what you think. You can find us just about everywhere at CPE Today, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. And please consider subscribing to us wherever you happen to receive your content. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and others. We'd love for you to leave a review and let us know what you think. It helps new listeners and watchers find our course and content. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for being in the office, and we look forward to seeing you back here soon. Take care.